Hi guys, thank you for coming back to my channel for my second episode here at Dark Flames. This episode will be talking about my blog Words of Trinity Young, and I'll be discussing the very first blog entries, well, the first two blog entries that I did. So please go grab a cup of tea like mine right here and we will get started. Okay, so in my first two blog entries, the titles were The Contrast of the Mind, Parts 1 and Part 2. And for a blog post, that seems like a whole mouthful. So I just wanted to explain to you guys where the thought process of that title came from. I truly believe that the way you choose to react to a situation, it can determine your overall view of that situation for the rest of your life. And the reason why I went with the contrast of the mind is because me dealing with my mom's death, me having to accept that into my reality, I could have done it one of two ways. I could have looked at it negatively as to like all of the things that Taya was feeling. If you read in part 2, she was very upset about how she found out, and she was very upset about all of the different things that was going on. It was very chaotic and very emotional time. And then there was the way I could have reacted to it positively, which is how I chose to go about it. And I never really expressed it. Well, I think I did at the end of the blog, but it was basically the contrast of the mind, the way you decide to let things into your reality, your perception on how you choose to react on life. That was a big lesson that I learned in my mom's death, and that's kind of where the title came from. For me, I chose to look at death in a positive perspective. I felt like my mom, her time here on this physical plane that I am here on and that you're here on, was up. And a lot of people have difficulties understanding death. A lot of people are saddened by it. A lot of people deal with it in a different way. And it's kind of crazy because I constantly think to myself, I thought that I was crazy. I remember I wasn't as upset. I made myself very busy. I really made it so that I didn't have time to properly grieve. I didn't have time to properly accept what was going on. I felt like I had accepted it, but again, kind of like me and my faith, I did not deal with it. And that was because I was too much in my head to come up with a positive perspective as to why I lost my mom. I finally came to the realization that once my mom had actually passed, it took me a while to get there, like maybe about good 3 months after she had gone, maybe in the new year. I feel like I started to have this sense that she was still with me. Things would happen and I would feel happy because it reminded me of her. I remember when I went on my trip to Japan, and on that trip I took my mother's ashes. And the reason why I took her ashes was because the year prior that I had went, I told her, I'm like, when I go next year, you're coming with me. Like, those were the words I told her. I was like, there's this garden, and it's the national garden that's over there in Shinjuku. And I'm like, I showed her pictures, and she was like, like, my mom loved going on nature walks, and that garden has the most beautiful nature that I could ever imagine. And I was so moved and so drawn to take her there. And I felt like because her ashes were there, and I ended up sprinkling her ashes near a bonsai tree, which represents a lot of different elements in life. And I felt so drawn to put her ashes there, and it looked out on a beautiful pond. And I really just felt like she was happy, like she was there with me. It was really crazy because in that moment I realized that my mom wasn't necessarily gone. She was gone on this plane, but in reality she lived on. She lived on through me, through my spirit, through my thoughts, through my actions. And that's something that I felt like really changed me in that moment. That picture that you see in the beginning of the video, when you click on it, that is the picture after I sprinkled my mom's ashes, and it was like this beautiful breeze, and I'm looking up at the sun, and I just really felt in that moment my mother's presence. And it's crazy because I felt it even more than I could ever have felt it with her being here. Like I felt it inside of me, and I felt so at peace. It was like I felt as though she was saying, thank you for making this trip for me. Thank you for doing the things that you did for me. And thank you for being who you are. And it's crazy to feel that. And she's no longer with me. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. I just can't express to you how it made me feel, because I've never felt it. So that was something that really propelled me forward. After that moment, I went back home and things started to really align with me. I started to realize and make connections. And this is, I think, when I decided to start to want to write a blog and putting the pieces together for it. And in the blog, I specifically expressed to you guys how much anyone who knows me knows I love Halloween. It is like one of the most amazing holidays I've ever encountered. Nothing makes me happier than dressing up and scaring people and being like able to talk about the crazy and not be considered crazy. It's one of the days that I always felt the most myself on. So it was, and it also connected me to my mom because it was the time of year where her favorite color was purple, my favorite color is orange, and I always was like, this is our celebration, like this is our holiday, this is something that connects me and you together. And that was something that I kind of made up along the lines, and it built me into the person that I am today. I really just felt happy, you know, on this day. And the fact that my mom passed away on this day, a lot of people would think that it would ruin. And again, that goes back to my perception, your contrast of mind, how you choose to allow your mind to think. And it's so easy for me to be like, I can't stand Halloween. It used to be my favorite, but then something terrible happened. Or I can realize that in life and in death, this day will always connect me to my mom. And that's how I choose to look at it. And that is something that I feel like makes me feel even more at peace, because it's like my mom knew how much that day meant to me, and I felt like she released her spirit to be with me on that day. And I felt her there that day. And it was really crazy to feel those emotions and make those connections all because you've lost someone. Just because you lose something does not mean it's gone. Sometimes you lose things to make way for other things. I lost my mom, but I feel like I gained myself because I realized who I was. And I think my mom always knew that. When I was younger, she used to always express to me how I was different. She always called me a social butterfly. She always encouraged me to speak and ask questions and to be who it is that I was. She encouraged my vocal side. She encouraged everything that I did. And that is one of the reasons why I have the confidence to be this vulnerable on film and to share it with you guys. That is one of the reasons why I'm changing as a person, and I wish to record that so that I can look back on this and be like, wow, this was my metamorphosis, this was me growing, this was me maturing, and this was me helping someone who may be going through the same thing and not realize that how you choose to think about a situation that happens to you, you get to determine how you want to look at the outcome. You get to determine how you want that story to unveil. Just because something bad happens in your life, that does not mean that you have to become a bad person and receive it in a negative way. Because if you choose to receive something that you deem to be bad in a negative way, it will consume you. The negativity will start to seep, and people will not want to be around you. And the last thing you need in that moment is to project that type of things, because that's not who you are. And it becomes a very frustrating and fragile situation. And I know, because I did that. Instead of dealing with it, instead of trying to think of a positive way, for like 3 to 6 months after my mom had passed, I was legit a robot. Some days I could not get out of bed, and it wasn't even just depression or anxiety. It was just the weight of trying not to be negative, but only being able to think of negativity. A negative force can really destroy someone's spirit, someone's soul. And that's why it's important to be able to overcome it. That's why it's important to be able to talk about it, because my words could be helping someone going through the same things. Everybody in life has to deal with death. It's how you choose to perceive that death that's going to ultimately make you feel like a better person. You can come out of the darkness and into the light and be a better person, or you can let it consume you and lose who you are. And I chose to do the opposite of that. I want to drink some tea. With all this being said, I know that my mom is still here with me. I chose to write both of these blog posts in memory of her. My mom always took me to libraries. My mom always encouraged my social abilities. She always encouraged me to be truthful and honest and real. And that's what I want to do with you guys. I want you guys to get to know me and learn from me. If nothing else, I hope that you were able to take something from that. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight. I hope to see you on my next episode.